Hey everybody, Blue ADV, my little channel. I'm not much of a poster, but this is kind of a long time coming. I've been wanting to do the springs and the fork seals and a fork oil change for a while. I'm at my a little over 12,000 miles. So I finally decided with it being January, it's a little muddy out there. I figured now is a good time to put the bike in the shop and kind of do some things. So you see we've already got the front wheel off, and I kind of wiped down the forks a little bit. Right here we've got the brake calipers. A really good spot to tie them up to is the crash bar. You use zip ties, but you just want to make sure you don't let it hang on your brake lines, and also be careful when you remove the ABS sensor. It's just one screw. It will just slip out, but just be careful because it is electronic, and anything that's fragile like electronics are probably expensive to replace, and we don't want to do that. So like I said, I got the front wheel off. I've kind of wiped down the forks a bit. This is what we're going to be installing, is some Touratech progressive springs by Hyperpro, and also I got some SKF fork seal kits. My fork seals fortunately are not leaking, so I may or may not do this step, but I really like SKF's seals. So if you're looking for a replacement for the Tiger 900 Rally Pro, I know it doesn't come up on the thing, but I kind of I went through some of the parts lists for other Triumph motorcycles, and I believe it was the 800 that I found uses the same exact Triumph part number fork seal, and then I cross-referenced that to SKF. So if you are looking for SKF seals, these should work. I will definitely let you know by the end of the video if I ran into trouble and had to replace it with some Triumph seals, which I do have standing by just in case. But you'll see that the part number for that is 115-0454, and that's a fork seal kit. And yeah, should be pretty standard. But yeah. Let's start. So I got the wheel off, like I said. I've already loosened up the clamps here. I did take a couple of measurements from the top of the cap to the top of the clamp. For me, it was right at 0.2 inches. I know the book says 3 millimeters, but what they are measuring is the top of the fork, the gold part there. And so for me, I use a little 6-inch rule back from my aircraft mechanic days, and I just measured to the top of the cap because I'm gonna have that cap installed before I set the clamp, and it's just easier to measure. So do it however you want, but make sure you measure it before you start taking the forks out of the clamps, because you will want to put them back to the same height unless you have some other specific knowledge as to why you want it different. All right, I'll update you once we have this thing out, and then we'll start disassembling each fork. I may do one before I video the other, so I kind of have a heads up of what to expect. To my understanding, they are identical in their internals, so I may practice on the first one so that I can give a better video on the one that I show you, because I'm sure you don't want to watch me do both of them, especially if they're the same. So, all right, I hope you guys enjoy this. Like I say, I'm not great at editing or anything, but the information's what you're looking for. Hopefully you get it here. All right, so we've got our fork leg off. I already did the other side. So this one I'm going to try to just show you basically how to tear this thing apart, replace the seals, and in doing this one we're also going to replace the springs. Turns out the SKF fork seals and dust seals absolutely work. I'm expecting a little bit better performance out of those. The springs, turns out progressive springs are already in here, but the ones from Touratech seem to be slightly thicker, and I'll show you that later. And their progression, their spring rates are a little bit different, and they are slightly longer. So those will probably absolutely provide a little bit better ride stock. So first thing we're going to do now that we have our fork leg off, let's go ahead and finish taking the cap off. We already loosened this while it was still in the clamp. Make sure that you loosen the top clamp before you try to loosen this. I know some people will say you don't need to, but a lot of these parts are aluminum and they will feel pressure from the clamp, and although it may come loose, what you don't want to do is just to have extra pressure on there, creating extra friction on your threads and just wearing them out. You don't want to wear any of that stuff out. So these forks have a little over 12,000 miles on them. And so unscrew that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to drain it. The majority of the oil we're going to drain off right now into what I've got here is just sort of a regular oil pan for like changing motor oil and stuff. I do not have a great shop. I have a garage that's, as you can possibly see, pretty short on spare room. So I apologize if this is not the perfect environment for this video, but as I suspect, a lot of you may have the same problem. You don't all have fancy shops to shoot, you know, YouTube videos in. That'd be great. Maybe one day. It's not going to happen today though. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of pump this a little bit, try to get as much of the oil out as I can initially. Once we get the top caps removed, we'll be able to work the you know, the top cap a little bit where those valves are. We'll work the valves back and forth to get some more of the oil out. You will notice as you do this that no matter what you do, there's just going to be oil coming from every part. So we'll try to clean as much of that off as possible as we go. Try not to make too much of a mess. So I'll just let this drain a little bit more, and then I'll show you how we set up the top cap for removal. All right, so we drained our oil, and as you'll notice, I don't have a vise or anything to have this extra holding clamp that Triumph says to put it in. If you've got one of those, that's great. I don't have it, but if you're looking for the T number, it's T3880171. So I will put a link down in the description below for where to find the actual service manuals for the forks and everything else on the bike. It is a subscription service, so you'll pay for a subscription for either an hour, a day, a week, a month, depending on how long you need it. What I have found is I will just get a subscription for an hour, and I will open what part of the manual that I need, and when I go to print, I will actually have it save as a PDF as opposed to actually printing. And then later I can just print off as many copies as I need. I'll try to go through in that 1 hour, and I'll try to save as many things as I think that I'm going to need. And that way I have it on a flash drive later, and I can print it off as needed. That way I don't need like a month-long subscription or anything like that. So like I said, I'll put the link down in the little notes section below. So now we have the first part of this disassembly is lower this down, and then we're going to take the Triumph tool. This is the T3880067 fork spring compressor. I got this from the dealership. It also comes with this plate, which we'll need in a second. And open it all the way up, and you're going to slip it over the top cap, and you'll look for these holes here, and you're going to try to hold it kind of centered, and then screw the pins in from either side. Now don't go all the way with the pins, and I'll tell you why. Is there is a tube inside of here which controls your dampening controls, or whatever these darn things are up top. Essentially there's a tube inside of a tube, and you don't want to crush that tube. So just enough to engage the two holes on this piece here, and we're going to push this piece down, and we're going to slip this piece underneath the nut as it becomes visible. So you're going to have to kind of do this, unless you've got a friend. Kind of hold the cap, push it down, and try to keep the nylon spacer in place, and you're going to slip this over that rod, and it will capture the nut. Then you can let go. Now from here, don't take your tool off yet. You'll still need it, but you'll see that rod that nut is connected to is the part that I was telling you about. You don't want to crush it or mar it in any way, and then later when you go to remove the rest of this, you want to be able to actually get the tool off, which if you close the pins in all the way, you won't be able to do. So from there, I'm going to take a 17mm and 14mm wrench. The 17mm will capture the top cap, the 14mm will go on the nuts. Now, this is important. You want to loosen the nut, which is the damper lock nut, just a little bit. So the intention is to separate the damper nut just enough so that you can spin the top cap. Okay, don't go any further. Then take a Sharpie and mark one of the flats with just a dot. What you're going to need to do is count the number of revolutions it takes to remove the top cap, so that when you put it back on, you put it back in the same place. This is important because when you have your dampener adjustments, you want the needle valve to go to the same spot. So we'll go ahead and count those revolutions, and we're going to write it down in our book, disassembly procedures here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now make sure you're pulling up on it at the same time so that you know exactly when the threads disengage. 7, 8. Okay, we got 8. Oddly enough, that is the exact same number that was on the other fork leg. As you see, this long, be careful not to bend it. This is the needle valve for adjusting your dampening and compression. So we don't really need to do anything to this. I just want to keep it clean, and we're going to put that to the side. Okay. Another thing to do is make sure you have a workspace where you can keep everything in order. As you take it off, we're going to keep it all together, but in the order that we take it off. So the next thing, now that we have the top cap off, I'm gonna write this down, 8 revolutions. Okay. And then we're going to make sure our pins are in. Okay, we're gonna compress the spring. We're going to remove the clamp and release the pressure. Now we can remove nylon spacer. We'll set that aside and remove our tool. Okay, now there's also a bumper in here. This piece. Okay. Make sure that when you're reassembling the fork, you don't forget to put these back. This is like sort of a rubber bumper, just in case you bottom out. We're going to wipe all our parts down. Obviously, if I had a full shop, we would go through a full cleaning process. Try to clean them as best you can. Final cleaning, you want to use a lint-free rag. We're just using these red shop rags initially, just to get the bulk of the fork oil off. All right, we have that tube off. We are going to now, we're going to work this rod, the dampening rod, a little more as we keep it over the oil drain bucket. Try to make sure not to spin this nut as much as possible. It will just make the reassembly of the fork cap go a lot easier. We're going to tip that in there and just let the rest of the oil drain. We'll pump the compression valve a few more times to get it all out. You'll notice that the spring is going to fall out also. You can go ahead and take that out. This is the stock spring. You can see it is progressive. The tighter coils point down. You'll need to remember that for reassembly. If you don't, that is how they show it in the manual. So it shouldn't be too difficult. We're going to actually replace this spring, and so I'll show you in a little bit the differences between the OEM spring and the Hypertech spring. Okay, nice and oily there. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is actually disassemble this so we can get down to the fork seals. So once you're comfortable with the amount of oil you've gotten out of the fork, and once again, it won't matter as you disassemble more and more. It's just you're going to find more and more oil. So just try to get as much as you can. It's not going to drain completely out. So next thing we're going to do is turn this upside down, which is an upside down fork. So it's a little bit ironic. Once again, I don't have a vise set up here, so we're just going to do what we can do. And if I can do it, you can probably do it too. Next thing is we're going to remove the dust seal. So be careful with this. Preferably non-marring tools. These are aluminum, so if you do mar them just a little bit, you can just take a piece of light sandpaper, fine grit, and just kind of smooth out the imperfections that you've created by trying to get this piece off. In this case, I'm not too worried about saving the seal because I'm going to replace it. However, if you were going to try to reuse them for some reason, just make sure to be gentle. I'm going to lift that up out of place. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to look for the spring clip and very carefully lift it up out of its groove. You don't need to get it off. You just need to lift it up out of the way. Try not to scratch anything. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is use a hammering action to separate the stanchion from the slider. And yes, my little garage is getting oil all over it. However, that can be cleaned up later. Okay. Alright, so once you have this spring out, dust seal, remember order is very important. We're going to just pull this side out with a hammering effect, and it's going to separate. And there you go. Now you can set this gold piece aside. There's nothing in it now, as you can see, except for old oil. So we're going to let that kind of drain. Off to the side for now. And we'll just kind of wipe this down. Now you can try to get more and more of this oil to come out. I suggest you try to get as much of it out as you can. But at the end of the day, it won't all come out, and unless you have a parts washer, it's really not going to make that much of a difference. Okay, just get the big stuff, wipe it down, and before final assembly, give it one last cleaning. You can use some type of cleaner, like brake cleaner, to where it's not going to leave a residue, and then use towels that do not leave lint. And then you can reassemble. So now that we have pieces separated, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start taking these top pieces off. As you'll see, there's a break in the bushing right here, as well as this one. This is the only one you need to worry about, the one that's actually clamped in there inside of a recess. Be careful as you remove this as you do not want to do two things. You don't want to ruin the bushing, and you don't want to ruin the slider. So, get my screwdriver here. I'm just going to put the tip of the screwdriver in between, give it a little twist, and then very carefully lift it off the slider. Okay, once again, we're going to keep these in order, the order in which they came off, and the lower bushing, the upper bushing, a steel ring, and the oil seal. Now in this case, we're not trying to save the seal, but as you lift this off, there is a sharp edge that could catch it. I try to save it as much as I can by pushing to one side and lifting it over the lip, but I'm not going to reuse this anyway. So if you use Triumph seals, the OEM seals, you'll notice that the letters are always supposed to point towards the outside of the fork, but we're going to replace it with SKF seals. So in that case, there's dots that point towards the outside of the fork. Right, so we're not going to disassemble any further. We're going to take a minute, we're going to clean this up, and then we're going to replace the seals with SKF seals. I like them a lot better. They do make dual compound, which I'd love to try, but I haven't found them for my bike yet. The SKF seals, if you go to SKF website or anywhere else, you're not going to find a part number for them. I had to do some cross-referencing between other bikes that use the same OEM seal, and I found something that works. So I will make sure to put those part numbers down below, so that if you decide that you want to use SKF seals as opposed to OEM seals, you're welcome to do so. They're both really good. You can see when you take them out that the OEM seals actually are very well designed. I wouldn't hesitate to go with either one of them. I think they're both really good. Just SKF I've kind of grown to like, so my preference, but I think they're really good. All right, so we're going to drain out what little more we can, and we're going to clean up all our parts, and then we'll get ready to put it back together. All right, kind of clean this up a little bit. We've looked it over. You want to look for any scratches or etching. Give it a good inspection. If anything looks out of the ordinary, you may want to go a step further and educate yourself on how to inspect and repair the surfaces. Any type of little scratch in the metal is going to cut your seals, and then you're going to leak oil. So got these cleaned up to where we want them. We're going to use a seal bullet from Motion Pro, and we're going to use these seals, SKF, the green seals. This seal kit is 115-0454. It's a kit G45S. I'm not sure which one of those numbers you need to find it. I think it's the kit G45S. Kit being, it's a seal kit. G means it's the green instead of black. 45 is the inside diameter or outside diameter of your fork stanchion. And S for seal, I guess. So first thing we're going to do is, even though they're brand new, we're going to kind of inspect them for any defects. Last place you want to find a defect is once it's all assembled. So these look good. We're going to start with the dust seal. Make sure it's facing the right direction and slip it over the bullet. straight down onto the stanchion, followed by our clip. And then we have the rest of our parts. So, going to be the oil seal. And you can't really see it here, but there are little dots on top. That's supposed to face the outside. We'll slip that on. Then we have the ring. And once again, if you don't remember the order, it is right here in the manual to rebuild. And it's also on fork assembly. You'll see it on disassembly also. So seal. So we went dust seal, retaining clip, oil seal, ring, upper bushing. Now to get the upper bushing on, we'll go ahead and take our bullet off. Just carefully slip that over. And then we have our lower bushing. Or upper, however you want to look at it. Depends. These are upside down forks, so I get it if that part is a little weird. So we're going to carefully open this up with a screwdriver. Now there is an outer coating on this for where the parts meet and slide. We don't want to mess that up. So be gentle. We don't want anything to scratch. All right. That's back together. Make sure it sits down in the recess, the groove, and also make sure the ends where you had the screwdriver didn't create any type of marring surface. Now we're ready to insert this back into the fork stanchion, or the rest of that fork. I'm going to try to keep this covered. Okay, so carefully slide it in, and then once you've got some of the space in there, we are going to grab our seal driver. I use the Motion Pro Ringer fork seal driver. This thing's great. If you haven't seen any videos on this, it's awesome. One of the things I really like about it is that this ring here, as you slip it around, it'll open. And once you actually attach it and rotate the rings, it's solid. This thing is not going to fall off of your fork and land on the ground and break or anything. So it's perfect. So we're going to go ahead and set this up. So I have the seal driver in place, and it's not going to fall off, so we can kind of manipulate this thing as much as we need to, which is good because I don't have a vise. And we'll seat the seal just enough to where we can get our clip back in. I think that's pretty good. So, and we'll remove our seal driver, set that aside, and insert retaining clip. So kind of walk it in there, and you can use a screwdriver to just, there we go. Make sure it clipped into place all the way around. That's it. Now bring your dust seal down, and if you can get it in with your fingers, that's great. That's ideal, which these are a little soft. I love it. They just go right down into place. All assembled. Look at that. Oh my gosh, so smooth. All right. Now we're ready to refill it with oil and put a new spring in. So for this fork, when you do oil, you don't actually have the spring in it. So this is the perfect spot. So we're going to pause. I'm going to show you the springs, and then we'll get right into filling this thing up with oil and reassembling. All right, we'll just talk about the springs we're going to replace these with. I have the Touratech by Hyperpro. So one thing I noticed is the length is a little longer on the Hyperpro. So if I put these right in the box end, you can kind of see the differences. So it's about, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch. Let's see what the difference is. About 0.4 inches longer. And then you'll also notice the spring rate is a little more gradual through here than it is here on the OEM spring. The OEM spring has a little bit tighter progression, whereas the Hyperpro is a little bit more elongated. I'm hoping that gives a much better ride. One thing I noticed is I did use a dial caliper to measure the thickness of the spring material, and it's just ever so slightly thicker on the Hyperpro. And you can kind of tell when you put your fingers on it. You can feel it, that it is different. I didn't take an actual measurement. I just kind of dial calipered between them, and I could tell that this one's slightly thicker material. So hopefully that translates into just a better ride. I mean, that's the whole point of putting in new springs. So those are the springs we're going to be putting in, and you can get this from Touratech as a kit, and it'll come with the fork oil and all of that stuff. So now we'll go ahead and set up for fork oil, and we'll measure that off. Fork oil is measured with the fork fully compressed. So fully compressed, we're going to fill this with oil, and then we will use a Motion Pro fork oil measuring tool set to 90 millimeters per the manufacturer's specifications, and then we'll finish up reassembly. All right, for the Tiger 900 Rally Pro, going to use the fork oil that came with our spring kit. It's a 10 weight, and they give you 2 liters. You'll need almost, I think it's around 3/4 of a liter per fork. So you'll have a little bit left over when you're done with this job. So we're going to go ahead and fill the fork oil. You want to fill it, so 90 millimeters is about, I don't know, that much. So we're going to try to get a little bit more than that. And then we're going to exercise the fork a little bit. One thing I noticed is that when you pull this dampening rod out, you want to do it slowly so that you don't squirt oil all over your shop. There is a little hole right here, and if you pull up too fast, it's just squirting oil as it comes up, and it's all over the place. So as you exercise it, you'll notice air bubbles come out and it'll take more oil. So as it absorbs some of the oil, we're going to put in some more. Doesn't have to be filled to the top. Remember, the final oil measurement is going to be 90 millimeters, so you've got a few inches there to play with. And we're just going to exercise this a couple of times to get all the air out. Okay. You can also lift up the stanchion. You can make sure that it's not leaking oil. It's not going to hurt. Exercising this a little bit before you put the caps back on will give you a good measurement for the oil to make sure it's the correct amount. So I'm going to exercise the dampener one more time. And this is the same on both sides. The process is the exact same. So now that we've exercised that a few times, get a clean rag here. All right. Now, we can use our Motion Pro oil measurement kit. So I've already got this set to the appropriate level for this bike, which is the Tiger 900 Rally Pro, set to 90 millimeters, which, if you're into inches, is 3 inches and maybe an extra 1/2 and a 1/16. But we're measuring millimeters today. So we're going to keep the fork level up and down. And then we're going to just siphon off the excess oil. And as soon as it starts drawing air, we will know that it is at the 90 millimeters per the manual. And there we go. All right, now I don't like to save this stuff. It's not perfectly clean. So I'm going to blow this back down into our waste collection. And we'll empty all that out later. Okay, now for the fun part I know you're all waiting for. And I have noticed that this part of reassembly is a pain in the ass. So one of the things we got to do is we have to get the dampener rod, and be careful when you bring this up. Like I said, it will spray oil all over the place, and you don't want that. So you'll notice that as it's vertical, it starts to slide back down. We don't want that. So we're going to lift up this a little bit so that we can tip it sideways, just enough so that we can get the spring back in, as well as the nylon bushing and our rubber ring here. And then we have to get our plate back on, so we'll be reinstalling the fork spring compression tool and getting it all back in. You'll notice that I'm tipping it so that I can keep the dampener rod extended. I have to slip the spring over it, as well as the spacer tube right here. And then I also have to get the compression tool back on here without that thing sliding down. I suppose if you were crafty, what you could do is tie a string to your dampening rod and run it through everything so that you could pull it up at the time that you need to. It's actually a really good idea. I'm not going to do it. Not today. So, all right. Make sure all our parts are handy. Got that in there. Grab our spring. And remember, the progressive portion of the spring actually goes down. I don't suppose it would make much difference if you inverted it, but that's the way we took it apart, so that's the way we're going to put it back together. Which usually lends itself to less mistakes. So, all right. I'm going to get this going here. I've got this. Here we go. Let me kick this back. I can tip it over quite a ways. It's not going to just pour out, but you want to get it to where the dampener rod doesn't drop on you. Just carefully slide the spring over, drop it down in, then you're going to drop the spacer tube. Okay, now I'm holding that dampener rod with my finger. So now that we've got this back in, we are going to install, well, one more thing. Keep it tipped so that it doesn't fall. Rubber spacer. Let's go ahead and put that in there. That'll just make it easier. All right. Now that that's in there, we're going to get our compression tool installed again. All right. Now, like I said, this is the tricky part. Try to hold the dampener rod with your finger so it doesn't fall, and then compress the spring enough that right now I'm gonna push the rod over, and I'm actually gonna rest this tube on the nut. I'm gonna get this spacer ready. I'm just gonna slip it over and then put this in one hand. I'm gonna compress the spring again, and then once I get it down below the nut, I'll slip this into place. Got it. All right. Yeah, the first time I did it was not that easy. So that's why I wanted to practice with the first one first, so that I could do the second one and be a little bit smoother as I show you guys how this is done. Now, we didn't move this nut very much. There's a point to that, because when we everybody, I noticed when I was reviewing the video that my battery died or my memory card was full, and it kind of cut off that last piece of how to install the cap. So I thought, you know, maybe I could talk about it and walk you through it, but at the end of the day, as crappy as this video is, I did put some effort into to doing this so that you guys could see it all the way through. So I'm going to disassemble the cap again, put it back to where the video left off, and then we'll finish it up. Fortunately, when it cut off, it didn't go that far back, so this shouldn't take long. We're going to reinstall our spring compressor tool. Okay. So. Two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we're back to where my last video cut off. Remember last time we installed this below this plate. This time when the cap came out, it was actually kind of tucked up into the cap. I can show you that real quick. It doesn't really matter. Just you want to make sure that, see when it kind of sat up in there, and the nut would be here. So it's just to make sure that it actually goes in there. It doesn't necessarily have to be below the nut when you're disassembling or reassembling this. So, all right, this is where we left off. We had got our spring compressor tool installed, and we compressed the spring and slipped our dampening rod retainer plate into place, and we're going to reinstall the cap. So make sure that you're very gentle with this. This would be easy, really easy to bend and cause damage to. You really don't want to do that, because I'm sure that finding a replacement piece without having to buy a whole new fork, it would be pretty difficult. Another thing, look over your threads in your O-ring, make sure there's no cuts. If your threads are dinged or anything, make sure to clean those up before you reinstall it. These all look good. So now we're just going to slide this back in. And remember, we put our nylon spacer originally was underneath the retaining clip. This time it's up here. So once again, it doesn't really matter. The reason I wanted to go back and really show you this versus just talking you through it is because we counted the number of turns that it took to remove the cap from the dampening rod. Okay, we want to turn the cap back in the same number. So if you remember, as you were unscrewing the cap from the dampener rod, we not only marked one of the flats so that we could count, we put a little upwards pressure on it so that we knew right when the threads disengaged, and that's how we knew when to stop counting. Okay, so this time we're gonna turn the cap in a little bit and tug each time about one flat. So now I'm going flat by flat. Here it's not engaging, here it's not engaging. Okay, right there, I turned one flat, it engaged. So now I'm going to observe my mark that I put on the flat, and I'm going to turn clockwise, tightening, the same number of turns it took to disengage the cap. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So your fork may have fewer, or it may have more turns to get back to where it was. I'm trying to keep it in the same factory position that it was when I got it. That way I know that my my dampening rod is in the right position for the right number of clicks. I think that's what it has to do with, because it's all about height, right? So now that we have that back in place, we're going to take our 17 millimeter and our 14 millimeter wrenches, and we are going to tighten the nut against the cap. Okay. Now, the book says 20 Newton meters, I believe. I'm just going to give it a good snug, kind of a point to where you can feel a sharp rise in torque. Okay, so you'll feel it move, creep, creep, creep. It'll be tightening, and then there'll be a point where you can feel the torque go way up. To me, once I hit that point, just you know, just a little bit of tightening action. You're not necessarily trying to move the threads, but that's where your torque's going to stop. That to me is snug. I'm not trying to be super paranoid about that specific piece. There are other pieces that I will torque. So now that we have our cap back, the dampening rod lock nut is back into position. We're going to compress our spring and remove our plate. And then lower this up and make sure that it sits back into the nylon spacer correctly. You'll kind of know this because the depth of the holes for your tool will be right up really close to the cap. If it's not aligned properly, you'll notice they'll sit way off. It'll be a noticeable difference. So then we will remove our tool. Okay, slide this back up. We're going to tighten our cap back on. So I hope you like this video. Like I said, I'm not a YouTuber. I don't know how to edit. As you can see, my shop is cluttered. It's not like the old days when I worked on aircraft where I had my amazing snap-on box and all my tools were shadowed, and gosh, that was great. And I had a huge shop I could work at. Right now I'm working in my garage, reloading bench, motorcycles. I got a squat rack over here, another motorcycle over there. Just, it's crazy. So hopefully it was informative, because that's my main point. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know, like, subscribe, that whole thing. I don't put out a lot of videos. You know, it's not my full-time job. I have a full-time job and a kid and a family and a hobby. And my hobby is not making videos. But I hope it was enjoyable. I hope you learned a lot. It's not near as difficult as it seems, but it will definitely save you a lot of money versus taking it to the dealership. The first one you do will probably take you, you know, a couple of hours, 2-3 hours. I think my first one, I went really slow and methodical, reading all the instructions. It took me about 4 hours. When I rebuilt this one, I honestly think, had I not been talking to you guys and just did it, probably would have taken me about an hour and a half, you know, maybe a little less if I had all my tools where I wanted them, and maybe a bench, and maybe one of those clamps that they have. That'd be great. But as you can see, I was able to accomplish that without the fixture that they recommend you have to hold the fork. It'd be great to have it. I don't work on bikes full time. I'll probably rebuild these forks unless they're leaking, you know, probably once a year. So I don't see the need to go buy an expensive fixture. You will need this tool. It comes with these two pieces. It comes with the spring compressor and the little holding plate. And that's going to be T3880067. You can get that from the Triumph dealership or online. I think I got mine. I think I got this one at the dealership, but it's a fairly simple piece. There's probably some aftermarket ones too. I don't know if you saw this from earlier. This was the fork seal driver that I used. I really like this one. I know it might cost a little more than, say, a Tusk or a Triumph branded tool, but I think the features on this are excellent, and the quality of a tool that you get is excellent. I would not recommend anything else for that. I know you're not going to use it often, but you know, buy once, cry once. It's not that much more expensive, and I think the quality and the design is worth it. Another thing was we used the SKF seals. It took me a while to hunt down the seals that matched the OEM part number for Triumph for the Tiger 900 Rally Pro, because most aftermarket companies haven't gotten to that point yet where it's in their catalog, so it's not a searchable item. So what I did was I looked up the Triumph part number for the seal kit, and then I started searching other motorcycles that Triumph made that used the exact same Triumph part number, and then I cross-referenced that number to an SKF seal kit because I like SKF seals. Use whatever you want. They're both really good. Triumph seals are great. I have a spare set for when I need them, but I wanted to go back to an SKF seal. Personal preference. For that, it's a Kit G45S. So it's a seal kit. Comes with the oil ring and the dust seal. It's a 45 millimeter. It's the green rubber. I think there is an option for black. The black kit is probably Kit B. This is Kit G because they're green. 45 because it's 45 millimeters. And S at this point I'm assuming is for Showa, because this is a Showa Fork. If there's any other questions about installation, removal of these, feel free to hit me up. Any questions, I'll try to answer them as best I can. I'm not a motorcycle mechanic by trade by any means. I was an aircraft mechanic for several years before I changed and went into something else. So if I don't know the answer, I'm probably able to hunt it down pretty quick. But this is a simple fork. I like this. I know that there's cartridge forks and other things like that that you can upgrade to, but simplicity is nice. Especially, I could tell if I had to do this on a trip, I could probably get by configuring some makeshift tools and stuff, or you know, even just one of my buddies giving me an extra hand. We could probably do this. It's definitely not something you should have to pay the dealership $200 per fork to do, I think is what they charged me last time. That's insane. So I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall this, and we'll get the wheel back on, and I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, hit me up. Like I said, I'm not a YouTuber, but I hope you enjoyed the video.